kite has already been to Brazil and back. Just a little point of interest. So, distracted by those birds. Back to what I was talking about. We have the opportunity to bring these birds a lot closer to you than you would normally expect to
I don't
experience
see any
them.
places
Those
for
of you that
Bill
are just
to
walking up in the
sit.
back, there are some seats down here in the front. If you want to grab them, there are some seats down on the far end as well. But there's seats here, seats here, seats here. Don't want anybody to have to feel like they have to stand. Should be plenty of room for all of us.
I go around this way.
The birds will be close to you during this program. And when I say close to you, I mean very close to you. Like birds are going to be flying right over your head. They're going to be flying right across the front of the amphitheater. The birds will be close to you during the program. I'll say it one more time. The birds will be close to you. Be ready for that. So, that's what to expect. What do I expect from you? Well, I expect you'll have lots of questions.
You could sit
I'll
next to
expect that
Nelson
you'll want to
here.
answer the questions that I ask, and I expect that if you have a question, you'll raise your hand to ask it, and if you want to answer a question, you'll raise your hand to ask it. And that's most important because one of the things that we do that's the most scary thing about us is we make lots of noise. So to be not scary, I'm going to ask you all to do your best to stay quiet, especially when the birds are close to us. If they're flying right over your head, do your best just to keep as quiet as you can. The other thing I need you to do is to stay as still as you can. So once you're in a spot, do your best to stay put in that spot. I know some of you are standing in the back. That's perfectly fine. Just make sure that if you are standing in the back, that you do your best not to move too much when the birds are close to us. We don't want to have any unintended collisions between humans and birds during the program today. And again, where are the birds going to be? They're going to be close to you, so be ready for that. We've got 5 birds planned for the program. Those are the ones we know we're going to see. And then we've got all these bonus birds that could show up. If you'll help me keep an eye out to the sky out here, and if you see anything out there, maybe we'll point to it and try to identify and take it from there. Some of you with really good eyes picked up on a little noisy bird that was behind us before the program. I can't identify it definitively, but I can tell you it was one of 2 things. It was either a downy woodpecker or a hairy woodpecker. Those are the 2 woodpeckers that we have that are about that size, that have that little red dot on their head that some of you picked up on. He was up in the tree over there making a lot of noise. We won't spend too much time talking about woodpeckers, though, because we work primarily with a group of birds called birds of prey here at the Center for Birds of Prey. I hope that you'll also take advantage of that asking questions thing. I'll stop periodically throughout the program to sort of check and see if you have questions, and I'll use the birds to tell you a little bit more about what we do here at the Center for Birds of Prey. First of all, we've got a bird coming toward us. So I want everyone to turn your attention to the far end of the field. He's making his way across the middle of the field now. When we look at an animal, how are we going to know that it's a bird? That's a question for you. How do we know it's a bird? Well, how do you know? You see an animal and you ask yourself, is it a bird? How do you know? Because it has a beak and wings. Do birds have beaks and wings? Absolutely, but turtles also have beaks, and bats also have wings. So it's not the wings or the beak that make you a bird. It's something else entirely. What is it? Because they have feathers, right? Feathers are that unique adaptation to birds. And we've got a bird in front of us now, and we'll see all over his body covered in feathers. Again, we work primarily with a group of birds we call the birds of prey. And they're special feathered animals in a lot of ways. They're also what we sometimes call raptors, which means that not only are they predators, animals that eat other animals, but they're predators that use a special part of their body to catch their food. They use their feet. So you're going to notice on most of the birds we look at today, they will have sharp grasping claws on their feet. We call them talons. Now be ready for those up-close flights right over your head. This is the most common of our daytime hunting birds of prey here in North America. It's a bird you've probably seen before. You might even have seen one on your way here to the center today. I saw several on my way to work this morning. This is a bird called a red-tailed hawk. They're easy to identify because of that namesake red tail when they're adults, but they also have some other defining characteristics. Okay, so again, over here, you young gentlemen that are standing up and young ladies that are standing up, everybody sit in your seat and stay sitting in your seat so that you don't have a collision with the bird. Sit down there. There we go. Almost. There we go. Now we're sitting. We don't want any bird-human collisions. That would be bad. Red-tailed hawks, again, that red tail, but they're a big bird with big, broad wings and a light-colored belly and a dark-colored back. And right across the middle of their belly, they have what we call a belly band. It's a darker band of feathers that goes right from leg to leg. You can see it when he turns and faces toward you. I think one of the best ways to identify red-tailed hawks starts not with what they look like, but with where they see them. In a lot of cases, we can identify birds specifically by the habitat that we find them in. And red-tailed hawks are what we call edge hunters. So they tend to live where a forest meets a clearing, what we would call a forest edge. They like to sit perched in a tree along that forest edge like he's doing right now. They wait for their prey to make a mistake out in the open, out in the grass in front of them, and then they ambush that prey from above. Typically, this is a bird that would be hunting things like squirrels and rats and rabbits, small mammal prey. Okay, remember, boys and girls, we're doing a fair job, but we could do better. Everybody stay put, and everybody do your best to stay quiet, especially when the bird's close. Because if we make him nervous, he's going to take off. He could take off at any moment now, and that's a part of this program, but we don't want it to happen. We want him to stay doing what we ask him to do. So, he's doing a pretty good job of that right now. Again, forest edge is where we expect them. Woodland meets a clearing, much like this field edge you see in front of you here. We see them along golf course fairways, power line easements. I see them a lot along the highway edge. They perch on utility poles by the roadway, and they look out over the median and the shoulder of the highway. That's what this bird was doing when unfortunately something bad happened to him. One of the things we do here at the Center for Birds of Prey is we operate what we call the Avian Medical Clinic. And what that is a hospital where we take care of birds like this one after bad things happen to them, like when they get hit by cars, or when they get tangled in things, or when they get shot. This is a bird that was hit by a car back in 2019. Unfortunately, in some cases, we can't put the birds back out into the wild. This guy has a problem that we can't fix. No matter how good our doctors are, our veterinarians, our medical team, they can't fix what's wrong with him. He's actually missing one of his eyes. So you'll notice when Justine brings him up close at the end of the demonstration that he doesn't have a right eye at all. And one of the things that predators need, you have them, are two eyes on the front of their head. So just like you and me, he's supposed to have two eyes that help him to focus on the target. Now what we're going to see next, hopefully, is he's going to get up in these trees back behind you, and he's going to work his way up higher and higher into the trees. The higher he goes, the faster he can come down after his prey, which today will be played by Justine. Justine is going to act like prey for the bird. She's not going to actually be the prey. She's just going to be the power for the prey. She has what we call a dummy bunny. It's a rolled up ball of carpet. She keeps it in her bag. It looks a little bit like what he would hunt normally, and he knows that when he catches it, he gets to eat, which is why he wants to chase that rolled up ball of carpet. So when Justine is ready, she's going to run with that rabbit behind her, and we'll see what the red-tailed hawk does. Again, he's working his way up in the trees. I lost sight of him. He's here. The higher he goes, again, the better chances he'll have. So you can see he wants to hop up higher and higher to a branch. Right along the edge is where he's best suited, where he's best prepared to come in and catch that prey.
My phone's overheating.
While we're waiting on that, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to start with the not school group people, and then I'm going to come to the school group people. So does anybody that's not with one of the school groups have any questions at this point? Nope. Here comes the rabbit. Does he want to chase it? The answer is also no. So that's an important point to point out. Does he always do what we want him to do? No. He does what he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. So sometimes he might respond right away. Sometimes it might take him a minute. He is wearing a radio transmitter. So during these demonstrations, we're able to keep track of these birds with a little piece of equipment that you'll see attached to them. It's called a radio transmitter. It just tells us which direction the bird is in if we can't see him. He's thinking about coming down. I think he's just got a branch in front of him. I think he's in a tricky spot. So I'll open now, since no one without the school groups had any questions. I'll open it to the within the school groups. You had a question right here. You forgot. That's okay. It happens to me all the time. Anybody over here have any questions? Nobody has any questions. All right. Well, here he comes. And notice, you can give him a round of applause. He did a good job. Or you can give Justine a round of applause for running. That was good too. All right, notice what part of his body did he use to catch the rabbit? He used his feet. He's a raptor. And then he would use his beak. We talked about birds having beaks, right? These birds of prey have curved beaks that they use to rip and tear their food into smaller pieces, and that allows them to swallow that food. He doesn't have teeth like you do, so he can't chew his food into smaller pieces, and he can't chew it up once it's inside his mouth. Now you notice as soon as he caught the rabbit, Justine gave him a reward. She gave him some food so that would solidify that relationship between catching that rolled up ball of carpet and getting something to eat. And that will make him want to chase that rabbit more and more as time goes on. This is a bird that's been in training again since 2019. A lot of folks ask, how long does it take to train a bird? And the simple answer is you're never finished. Just like any other animal that you might train, whether it's a dog or a human or anything, you're never finished. You're always a work in progress, and every day when you get trained, you get better and better at doing what you're doing. Right now, he's eating a day-old chicken. You'll notice that he swallows that food pretty quickly. Generally, wildlife do not take their time eating. They tend to eat very quickly because there are lots of other animals out there that would like to steal their food from them, and they don't want to have their food stolen, so they eat it as quickly as they can, get it inside of their body so nobody can take it from them. No questions. You're going to make my job hard today. Yeah.
What's the biggest or smallest animals they can hunt?
So biggest or smallest animals they can hunt? That's a great question. So we'll start with smallest. There's nothing really too small. I've seen red-tailed hawks eating insects. I've seen red-tailed hawks eating small reptiles, things like lizards and snakes and things of that nature. Largest food they can eat, generally they go for things smaller than they are. That would be a good rule of thumb, right? You don't want to go after something too big because then you run a risk of getting injured in the process, and nobody wants to get killed by their food, right? So generally less than half of your body size is pretty safe. So a red-tailed hawk and a gray squirrel go pretty well together. That's kind of the optimal prey for a red-tailed hawk. Great question. Did you remember your question?
Yeah, one time ago, when I was driving back home from school, on the road I saw the dead hawk.
You saw a dead hawk. Okay, so it does happen. We see these dead birds after they get hit by cars, and sometimes there's something we can do to help them, and other times there's nothing we can do to help them. What we can do is work to clean up those road edges. Why was the hawk by the road? He was by the road because there was a rat or a squirrel by the road. Why was the rat or the squirrel by the road? Because there was something for him to eat there, likely something that was thrown out of the window of a car, what we would call litter. So what can we do to prevent that? We cannot litter, right? That would be a starting point. And even better than that, even better than not littering, is go clean up somebody else's litter, right? It might not sound like fun, but it's a great way to help wildlife, to keep those road edges clean. If you see some trash on the ground that you're walking past, take a little initiative. Stop, pick it up, put it where it belongs, so that we don't cause any animals to get harmed by attracting them to a highway. Great question, great point. Any other questions down here? Any other questions down here? Any other questions in the middle? Yeah, you got one.
We actually do.
You actually do clean up trash. Excellent. So I applaud you for that. Right? Good job cleaning up trash. We have an Adopt a Highway program here at the center. We're actually going to do it this Saturday. We're going to go out on the highway. We're going to pick up as much trash as we can pick up. It's amazing how much trash we have to pick up. 4 times a year we do it, and there's always plenty of trash out there. Yep.
How long is the wing?
How long are their wings? That's a great question. Red-tailed hawks have what we call a broad wing. So not only is it pretty long, it's about 3 feet from end to end. So that would be about yay long from end to end. But also they're very wide from front to back. So some birds have long tapered pointed wings. The vultures of the world. So there are 23 species of vultures on planet Earth. This is the smallest of the world's vultures, or the smallest of the vultures that live here in the New World. It's called a lesser yellow-headed vulture. It's a very similar bird to our native turkey vulture, but a bird that you would find in Central and South America. If you traveled to Mexico or even further south, you would find the lesser yellow-headed vulture. Now, think about this for a second. A red-tailed hawk that's in good habitat, like the one we saw a minute ago, he could basically just sit in a tree and wait for his food to come to him. But a vulture can't just sit and wait for his food to come to him because his food doesn't move, right? Because his food is dead. So he has to be constantly on the go looking for food, and that's where that efficiency comes in. So this bird actually has larger wings than the red-tailed hawk, about a 4-foot wingspan, and very wide wings. And his body weighs even less than the red-tailed hawk does. So he's got more wings, less body, which means he can stay in the air very easily, and he'll do that. Right now he's doing a great job of it behind you, but he's going to loop back around, don't worry. Here he comes, looping back in. That efficiency is the superpower of the vulture. So stay in the air for long periods of time, looking out for signs that there might be food on the ground. Now, how is a vulture going to find food? He has basically 3 options. He can see the food, right? That's a pretty good option. He's got excellent eyesight, very large forward-facing eyes. He might even be able to smell the food. So when this yellow-headed vulture comes up close, I want you to look closely at his face, and you'll notice that he has a very large nostril. His nose is huge, and some vultures have very well-developed senses of smell, so they can smell things like dead animals even a long way away. So we can see the food, we can smell the food, or this is what happens in most cases. We can see another vulture that already found the food. That's the best way as a vulture to find a meal, is to look out for someone that's already found it. So what we often see out of follicles, kind of like your hair grows out of your body out of follicles, but it's very, very similar to your hair or to your fingernails. What is the bottom of their feathers made of?
The body.
What is their body made out of? Their body's made out of the same thing your body's made out of, cells. And those cells form organs, and those organs form organ systems, and those organ systems form the body, right? So just like you, they have little tiny parts of their body, and they have bigger parts made up of those little tiny parts. Yeah?
I have a question about the red tail.
You have a question about the red-tailed hawk? Yeah, go ahead.
What age do they get their
At what age do they get their red tail? That's a good question. So a young red-tailed hawk, before they turn 1, has a brown tail. And then what happens to those tail feathers when they get worn out? They fall out. It's called molting. So a young bird has feathers that then fall out of its body, and new feathers grow in behind them. That's called molting. And usually the second set of feathers that they grow in has kind of a reddish tint, and by the third set of feathers, so when they're 2 years old and they've molted twice, they have a really bright red tail. So at least 1 year old, but somewhere between 1 and 3 years old is when they get their red tail. Great question. Other questions? Yes. So, you might see a bird circling in the sky, and it might be making noise to do something. Why would a bird make noise? The same reason that we make noise. They make noise to communicate with one another, right? I'm not a very good translator, so in most cases I can't tell exactly what they're saying, but depending on the time of the year, it might be defending territory, it might be talking about breeding, it might be a young bird. This time of year, we hear lots of young birds begging their parents for food, right? So they make noise to communicate all the same kind of things that we might communicate to one another by making noise. Great question. Yes? How did a South American vulture end up here at the center? That's a great question. So most of our non-native birds, the ones that come from other parts of the world, including this next bird, are birds that were bred as a part of conservation breeding programs. So about half of our educational collection are birds that hatched right here at the Center for Birds of Prey. This bird hatched here to be a part of our education program. Also, birds bred in captivity can be utilized to help restore populations in the wild when they become endangered or threatened, or when we have problems. So none of the birds that you'll meet during the program will be released back into the wild, but it is possible that they could be if the need arose to release them back in the wild. So
Yeah.
I think most of you recognize this next bird, at least generally. First of all, we can say for sure that it's a bird because it's covered in feathers. And if we look closely, we'll see that it has grasping talons like the red-tailed hawk, and it has a curved beak like the red-tailed hawk, and it has large eyes on the front of its head like the red-tailed hawk. But I think we all know right away it's not a hawk, right? What is it? An owl. Very good. This is an owl native to Central and South America, very similar range to the yellow-headed vulture. It's a bird called a spectacled owl. Our woodpecker is back. He's up there on that same stick. And what's he making that noise for? That's communication as well. So even though he's not making that noise with his mouth, he's making that noise by tapping on a hollow branch of a tree, and that communicates to other woodpeckers important woodpecker information. Again, I wish I could translate exactly what he was trying to say, but suffice it to say, he's talking to other woodpeckers about important stuff. So back to the spectacled owl. named for that white rim of feathers around the eyes that looks a little bit like eyeglasses. Spectacles are just another fancy word for eyeglasses. This is a bird, again, found in Central and South America and found primarily in the dense rainforests of the Amazon River Basin. So, unfortunately, a species that is losing habitat as we speak. There are less and less places for spectacled owls to live as we develop and continue to develop those lands in Central and South America. So, understanding how to breed them in captivity is an important component in their conservation. Like most owls, he has a very distinct appearance. He's got a very flat-looking face, and that flat face, what you're actually looking at, believe it or not, are the ears of the owl. So ears come in lots of shapes and sizes. We have these flaps of skin on the side of our head, and rabbits have those flaps of skin on the top of their head. Well, owls have flaps of skin on the front of their head. We call them facial discs. They're just plates of skin covered in feathers. They go around his eyes. They actually do the very same thing that your ear flaps do. They catch sound waves and focus them on holes in the side of his head that lead to his middle ear and his inner ear, all the bones and the nerve endings that allow him to hear the sounds that he needs to hear. He can hear effectively enough that he could likely catch prey that he's never seen. So he doesn't have to see them. With owls, if we want to ask them to do what he just did, we essentially have to raise them by hand. So he begs for food because he thinks Addie's his mom, for lack of a more complicated description of the relationship. Yeah, what's your question? Did anything bad happen to him? That's a great question. Nothing bad happened to this owl or any of the rest of the birds that we're going to see in the program. The only bird that came through our hospital today in the program was our red-tailed hawk. All the rest of the birds are birds that were hatched specifically to do this job. So nothing physically wrong with them. He's got both his eyes. He can fly just fine. He's a bird that was bred to be an educational ambassador. Yeah. Do owls at night most of the time, and that owl was awake during the day because his job is to do programs during the day. So one day you might get a job where you have to go and work at the hospital at night on what we would call the night shift, right? And that will mean you will have to change the way your body feels about being awake at night, because humans are what we call diurnal animals. They're mostly awake during the day. Does that mean we're only awake during the day? Are you only awake during the day? No, you get up at night if you need food or if you hear a noise that might be dangerous, right? You're awake when you need to be awake. And the same is true for owls. They're awake when they need to be awake, but they're most likely to be active at night in most cases. Now, that being said, everybody put your hands down and get ready for what I think might be the most exciting part of the demonstration. This is North America's only underground nesting bird of prey. It's one of the owls. It's called a burrowing owl. So, unlike most owls, burrowing owls are daytime active. They're active primarily when the sun is shining. And you'll notice a lot of other pretty distinct differences between the burrowing owl and the other owl. First of all, she's very small. Birds come in all different shapes and sizes, some large, some small. You have to be small to make a living eating insects, which is what burrowing owls primarily are feeding on. You'll also notice that she spends a lot of time walking and running on the ground. We didn't see the spectacled owl on the ground at all, but burrowing owls spend a lot of time on the ground, and even, as you'll see, under the ground. As their name suggests, burrowing owls spend time in burrows, and that relates to the habitat that burrowing owls live in. Burrowing owls are found primarily in the Great Plains here in the United States, and that's those wide open grasslands that are west of the Mississippi River. They live in an area that doesn't have very many good hiding places. Where are most small birds hiding from their predators? They're hiding all the time. Where do they hide?
On the ground.
Oh, not on the ground. I don't see any birds hiding on the ground except this one. Most birds hide in trees, right? Trees are a great place to hide from predators. You can go up and get away from the predator. You can hide against the trunk of the tree. And as we saw earlier with that woodpecker, it can be really difficult to locate them, even if they're making a lot of noise up in the trees. So trees are the preferred place for most small birds to hide. But this bird lives in the prairies, those wide open grasslands that don't have very many trees. And so they've evolved this different strategy for hiding, which is go under the ground. Now, usually they are hiding in burrows either that they dig with their own feet. They are very strong diggers. They use their toes to move the dirt around. Or what we see in many cases is that burrowing owls will live right alongside other burrowing animals like prairie dogs. So the burrowing owl and the prairie dog are often seen hand in hand living in the same set of tunnels here in the plains in the United States. It's a great arrangement for the burrowing owl. They don't have to do all the hard work of digging the tunnels, and they just live right alongside those other animals. But unfortunately, prairie dogs are often considered pests. And pests, as I'm sure you are aware, are animals that we don't like very much that we want to get rid of. And prairie dogs are one of those animals that humans have done a pretty effective job of getting rid of them in much of their range. And that leaves the burrowing owl out in the cold, so to speak. Leaves them without a place to hide. And unfortunately for them, that has led to declines in their population throughout their range. This is considered an endangered bird. And the bird got its name from a type of flight called kiting, which is where on a windy day you face into the wind and you just sort of float there in the breeze. And that's what these birds are really great at doing, floating in the breeze. And while they're doing that, what they're typically doing is looking for prey. Things like dragonflies and grasshoppers, June bugs, cicadas. That's what makes up the diet of this group, primarily large flying insects. So what Justine is going to be doing, periodically she's going to raise her hand like this, and that'll be her cue to the bird that she's going to toss a piece of food up into the air. What I want you to do is imagine that that piece of food she tosses into the air is a dragonfly or a grasshopper or a June bug or a cicada, a large flying insect. And watch what the kite does. We know that he's a raptor, so just like the hawk and just like the owls, he's going to use a very specific part of his body to catch that food. What's he going to use? His feet, his claws, his talons, right? But unlike most of the raptors, what the kites do that I think is really exciting is they actually eat while they're flying. So he's going to fly through, he's going to catch the food in his feet, and then without stopping, he's going to eat that food while he's in the air. We saw the red-tailed hawk catch the rabbit, and it stopped on the ground to eat the rabbit. But stopping when you're eating insects doesn't make quite as much sense as when you're eating larger food. If he had to stop every time he caught an insect, he'd waste most of his day stopping. So instead, catch and eat over and over again. As long as there's food around, keep catching, keep eating. Stay where the food is located. Don't go too far from where you know there's a meal. Up goes the food, into his feet, and then quickly into his mouth. Now, if these were dragonflies, he would be processing them as well. He'd be picking off the less desirable parts, just swallowing the parts that provide him the nutrition that he needs, right? Don't fill up on wings and exoskeleton. Just eat the good meaty parts of the dragonfly. But probably the most prominent feature of the kites are their tails. They tend to have very long tails for their body size, and in most cases those tails are forked in the middle. That long forked tail gives them the maneuverability they need to respond to the movements of their prey. So this is where I was talking about being quick, right? He doesn't have to be lightning fast, but he does need to be able to turn quickly to respond to the movements of prey. And that long tail is what allows him to do just that. He can turn on a dime and whip around a corner and respond to that movement of that prey. Most kites, again, triangular tails, even forked in the middle. Our native swallow-tailed kite has one of the most dramatically forked of all the tails in all the bird world. It looks like a big black pair of scissors. Again, highly maneuverable. Most of the kites are also migratory. Our native kites, we already talked about it with that little Mississippi kite that flew by. They all fly to Brazil in the fall, and they return from Brazil to South Carolina to breed in the spring. They're here basically April through August, and in that time, they're building a nest, they're laying eggs, they're incubating those eggs, they're hatching chicks, they're raising those chicks to full grown, and then they're getting ready to fly to South America again. That's all in about 4 months, April through August, and that only allows the chicks a very short window of time to grow. So if you imagine for a second how many dragonflies it's going to take to keep a bird like this alive every day. There is a Mississippi kite out over the trees. Maybe that same one out there looking for dragonflies. Mississippi kite. What kind is this? I didn't tell you, I don't think. This is called a yellow-billed kite. It's a native of Africa. So he's a little different than the Mississippi kite. He's bigger. That's the main difference. But very similar in most respects. They're also social feeders. So I can't deny the fact that maybe that Mississippi kite over here saw this yellow-billed kite and said, wow, I wonder if he's eating dragonflies. Let's go check it out. Here comes this Mississippi kite really close, right, diving in for insects and eating that insect as he's flying. Again, pretty remarkable stuff. Wow. Oh, what was I talking about? I was talking about feeding your young, right? It's going to take a lot of dragonflies just to keep an adult Mississippi kite alive, how many times are they going to have to go back and forth to the nest to feed their young with one dragonfly in their feet? That doesn't sound really practical. So what we see in a lot of cases is that during the breeding season, they broaden their prey base. They expand what they're hunting to include things like snakes and lizards that they grab out of the treetops. There's a lot of food up in the top of this tree canopy. Might be a snake, might be a lizard, could be a nest of hatchling songbirds. And what the kites will do is grab that prey right off of the branches and carry it back to their nest to feed their young. So to show you what that looks like, I want everyone to imagine for a second that Justine is a tree. Right? She's going to put a little piece of food on the tip of her finger. Notice she's using her hand with no glove. Maybe that was a snake on the branches of the tree. The kite flew in and he grabbed the food off of the tree branch. Did he grab the branches of the tree?
No,
How do we know he didn't grab the tree branch?
she's still.
All 9 fingers still, right?
Oh,
She
whoops.
still has all 9 fingers. She is safe. If we think about it, though, from the point of view of the kite, if he accidentally grabs the tree branch, he's going to injure himself. He's going to run the risk of perhaps life-ending injury. So he's got to be very accurate. Justine knows she can do this demonstration safely over and over again without having to worry about the safety of her finger because the kite can't grab the tree. We don't do this demonstration with any of the other birds where we put the food on our fingertip because it has a very different ending than all the other birds, where the bird grabs your finger and there's blood everywhere and it's really unpleasant. But watch how precisely the kite grabs the prey right off of the branch.
Wow.
Grab it and go. And feed on that food, or maybe carry that food back to your nest to feed to your young. All right, looks like we have lots of questions. What's your question? What are birds' bones made out of? Calcium, just like your bones are made out of. And cells, lots of cells.
Doing all right?
Are any of the birds we saw native to South Carolina? The red-tailed hawk is native to South Carolina. The burrowing owl flies all over the place, and this guy shows very little interest in the dragonflies. Why would that be? So imagine you have 2 options in front of you. One is chase a dragonfly and try to catch it so you can eat it. And 2 is wait until Justine raises her hand and fly to Justine, and Justine will throw a piece of food basically into your feet. Which option are you going to choose? Yeah, you're going to take the easy option. And the same is true for the bird. He knows where he has to go to get a meal. He doesn't show much interest in the wild dragonflies because he knows this is where the easy meal comes from. Yeah. How do birds get their food? So most of the birds of prey get their food by catching it with their feet. They see it with their eyes, and then they fly it and they grab it in their feet. Some birds will catch food in their mouth, but not the birds we work with. Most birds that we work with catch their food with their feet. How do they grab it? Just like you would grab something and pick it up with your hand, right? Except their feet are the part that they use to catch it, because they don't have fingers, remember. They do have toes, though, so they're using those toes to catch their food. Yeah.
How far do they fly away from the nest?
How far do they fly away from their nest? Usually when they leave their nest for their first time, what we call fledging, they fly a long way away from their nest so they can get away from their parents. It'll be something that you will one day do. At least your parents are hopeful that one day you will fledge from the nest and leave and go a long way away. Right? And start your own family. Not that we don't want you around, right? But it's important that you get a little ways away so you can start your own family with unrelated animals. And the same is true with birds. It's called a post-fledging dispersal. They'll go sometimes hundreds of miles away from their nest when they're young. Kites go thousands of miles away from their nest. They fly all the way to South America, and then they come back to South Carolina to make their nest again the next spring. So some birds fly thousands of miles away from their nest. Some birds maybe just dozens or even hundreds of miles. Yeah. Why is the burrowing owl small? That's a question I get all the time, and I don't have a very effective answer for it. Because if all animals were the same size, right, if all the owls were as big as a spectacled owl, then they would all be competing with each other. And that doesn't work out very well. They'd all want the same food resources. So if I'm smaller, I can eat smaller food and get what I need. If I'm bigger, I need a little bit bigger food. So does the big bird compete with the small bird? Not really, right? So a lot of it has to do with competition. Yes? This bird was hatched here at the center. Yes, ma'am. All of our non-native birds. So after this demonstration, I'm going to encourage all of you to walk around and explore the campus. We've got about 100 110 or so birds from all around the world on display, broken into two main sections. Behind you are the daytime hunting birds. There's 9 buildings filled with eagles, hawks, falcons, vultures, kites. They're all this way. Behind me across the field is what we call the owl wood. We've got 3 buildings filled with a wide variety of, you guessed it, owls in the owl wood. All of our non-native birds, all the ones that are not from North America, are birds that were hatched in captivity. Almost all. A few that were taken from the wild. And almost all of our native birds, the bald eagles and the red-tailed hawks, are birds that were injured in the wild and couldn't be returned to the wild. Yes, sir.
We live on Lake Moultrie and we see a lot of ospreys.
Osprey, yes.
They'll eat fish.
Osprey are a unique raptor that they only eat fish, right? That's their entire diet.
Second question. We go to Costa Rica a lot. We see toucans. How many?
So toucans, different beak, right? Big, long beak, and I think toucans are fruit eaters. Mostly. I'm not sure. So something about that big, long beak allows them not only to eat fruit, but it allows them to communicate with body language, right? So the colors on that beak are important body language, and it allows them to thermoregulate. So there's a lot of blood vessels close to the surface in their beak. It allows them to lose and gain heat effectively in their environment. So that beak does lots of things for them.
An osprey, if it drops a fish, it doesn't go back to get it usually.
So if an osprey drops a fish, will it go back to get it? In a lot of cases, you're right, they don't. And sometimes they get chased by eagles who will scare the fish out of their feet, and then the eagle goes and gets the fish. Osprey are kind of awkward on the ground, right? They're built for diving into the water. They're not built for landing on the ground. It's pretty rare to see one land on the ground. They'll land up in a tree or on a pole, but not on the ground. So if they drop their fish, they may not go back to get it. It's a good observation. Yeah, what's your question?
How do they get bees?
How do they get beaks? So their beaks grow just like your fingernails do. Right? They grow out of their body, and they're made out of calcium, except they grow out of their face. So it's really interesting that they have this calcium thing growing, this piece growing out of their face. It's just the way birds have evolved. Yep. Do birds have special vision? Yes, birds of prey have binocular eyesight, 2 eyes on the front of their head looking at the same target, and they have really powerful vision. They can see things at a great distance that you might not notice even if they were right in front of your face. So yes, birds have very specialized vision, very special eyesight. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap up, and then if there are more questions, Justine and I will stick around until we've answered all the questions that we can answer. So first of all, in wrap up, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming to visit with us. We've had a great time chatting with you about birds, and hopefully you enjoyed yourselves. That's unnecessary, but thank you. Again, lots to see after you leave the amphitheater. Daytime hunting birds this way.
Gonna be sitting out more in the sun, I think.
Crested Caracara.
South America.
Wow. Hope that wasn't their mating call when they saw me.
It's cool, like how he can bend his head backwards. American kestrel. That was another bird that they had last time I was here doing the flight demonstration with the kestrels. It's right up there.
Sharp-shinned hawk. North and South America.
Burrowing
There's
owls.
the burrowing owl that we saw.
Yep. They're probably in the burrows. It's too hot to be out here, huh? So they would be down there. You can't really see them.
Vulture. It's my 3rd favorite animal.
Your 3rd favorite.
Because they're ugly. And they
Oh.
feed on dead animals. But you don't ever see them until you see a dead animal. You notice that, right?
Well, yeah, that's what he said. They feed on anything, including whales. But
Assuming it's dead. I mean,
assuming they're
exactly
dead.
Kill a whale.
They're gonna. Yep. The only problem with taking pictures here is you got that wire in the front.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
North American barn owl.
Where is he?
Right there. It's facing
Oh, yeah,
away
I
from
see
us.
him. He's in the little house there.
Maybe one day I'll have a place of my own like this, where people can walk around and
Place of your own when you get to be rich.
spectacled owl.
See if I can zoom in on him. Lighting's not the best here.
Oh,
I think he wants you to come back. He's following that. Move it side to side and see if he follows it. He is.
he's curious about it.
Probably never saw one of those before. Just like the lady at the gift shop there. I think that's a comeback. He's
Wow.
peeking around at you. No label. Oh, I thought you were handing it to me. Is he following it?
Maybe it thinks it's food.
Put it down low and see what he does.
Interesting. What is this?
It doesn't have a label here, so I'm not sure.
Labelless owl.
Yep. Just getting in defensive mode. Red-tailed hawk. They're my third favorite.
You have a third favorite hawk?
Red-tailed hawk.
Where is it? Was it used for a demonstration?
Yeah, remember that was the first one that
I
came
think
out.
it's sleeping in there. Yeah, it might be sleeping in there.
Oh, you know what we should look for?
He's still curious about it.
We should look for that, those two nests that he was talking about. He said they were in between the
That we're told specifically to keep away. Zone-tailed
No.
hawk.
No,
I mean, the proximity.
yeah, don't disturb them. You probably can't get that close to them because you'd have this to
Yeah.
separate you. That's a beautiful bird.
Short-tailed hawk. Wow.
They're all curious about that thing.
This one doesn't seem to be curious about it.
Yeah, he is. Sounds like a girl screaming in distress. I think there was more back there. Or was it? Yeah.
Vulture restaurant viewing area.
So you get your choice of dead animals to eat for the day, huh?
So I'm gonna have to pick which animal I prefer to eat me.
Oh man, I'd love to get inside of your head for about 5 minutes. Mississippi kite.
Another
Yes.
form of kite.
That's my first favorite animal.
Do all kites travel from North America to South America to evade the cold weather? What do you
A
think?
good question. We should have asked him.
Shallow-tailed kite.
Swallowtail kite. You know, if I keep taking pictures here, I might have to charge this before we do if we do the owl demonstration.
You're on 64%. You can last the rest of the day.
Think so?
You were not charging your phone at all from the minute you started the cruise to the minute you got back, and that was at least 5 hours. Right?
Right.
Not exactly minute by minute, but...
Okay. You're right.
Besides, my car's right there if you ever need to charge it.
That's what I was thinking. When we go back to see Bill, I could charge it a little. That's a beautiful bird, too. Cooper's hawk. Yeah. The guy was... I think we missed it at the beginning. Before they do the demonstration, they have handlers out there with three or four different kind of birds holding them.
Hamburgers?
Standing there. Birds. Different kind of birds.
Oh, what did you say before that? You said something about hamburgers.
Handlers holding them on a
okay.
glove. And then you can walk up to them and take pictures and ask them questions.
Turkey vulture.
Okay, this is the turkey vulture. So he said that the nests were in here somewhere. Oh, yeah. Look at that. 3 babies, he said, for one of them.
Wow, I got to record them pooping.
Oh, exciting.
Now, a lot of these were just raised here.
Yeah, some of them were raised here. These, he said, just found this as a good place to make a nest. So once the babies are all big enough to get on their own, their mother is looking at us really suspiciously here. So there was a nest with 3, what did he say, 7-day-olds with downy fur or downy feathers, which is what they have. But there was another nest here too.
Mm. They're pretty docile for wild birds.
Yeah, I guess they don't have to be aggressive. Their food is not going to fight back, right?
Correct.
So there they are, the new fledglings. Did he say 7 days old, or they were pretty young?
The 3 vulture tears.
3 vulture tears. That's a good one. We'll go with that. Lesser yellow-headed vulture. So the other nest... know what these are.
Bald eagles?
Yep.
I thought you said you don't know what they are.
I said, you know what these are.
They're huge.
They're very huge. They're also very active. I think they're having a lover's quarrel here. They don't
Wow.
sound very happy. I wonder what's going on. Is that okay now with the heat?
As long as we're moving, we get some wind on it, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, mine's starting to get warm, but it's not giving me the signal yet.
Like, maybe that lady was so interested. That was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, those are big.
I think that's a golden eagle, if I remember. correctly.
You're right.
Yeah, that's the biggest of them all, I think.
Wow. Very cool. North America, Europe, Asia.
I think they can take a little kid and fly away with them. At least that's kind of what I remember reading somewhere. That I think are they native to Europe? Asia. North America, Europe, and Asia, everywhere. Golden eagle. Beautiful birds.
Abdem stork,
Mm-hmm.
Africa. How do they get one from Africa?
Don't know. They're not going to, unless they maybe import them over here just to have for displays here.
I gotta ask you, how old are those shoes? Because you've had them since I met you.
I know, I was thinking that's where I got ripped off. I was going to buy a new pair. And I ordered them and they never came. And found out it was an illegitimate company that I ordered them from. Saker.
Saker falcon. Asia.
I'm trying to call them, huh?
Leonard falcon.
Keep going, you'll find somebody that answers you.
Northern goshawk.
Oh, he's pretty.
North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. So they're in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Does this
Oh.
go back?
Hmm?
Does this go back?
Oh, wow. Check this one out, Nelson.
Wow. Stork. That lady said it was
Huge.
50 years at least.
Oh, yeah. 50 years old. Here's a 50-year-old marabou stork. She's curious,
She is curious. Is it from the stick?
or you're whistling,
Or the fact that there's two people here?
and nobody comes back here because it's out of the way. I think it's your whistling. Her beak looks very old.
I don't think I've ever gotten this close to a stork before.
I don't think I have either. Pretty passive. But for 50 years old, I'm not going to move around if I was a stork either.
It doesn't look like there's anything here.
It's 1:15. We probably should
Head back.
Well, if we're going to do the guided tour, yeah, we probably should head back.
How are you?
Hi.
They have another bald eagle.
You here too?
More bald eagles.
I did not know that.
No luck.
Keep trying. Here's our, what is it, fourth bald eagle?
For what? Total?
Fourth, yeah. Because we saw two of the other side that were fighting. These two here.
So 2 + 2 + 1.
It stinks here. Smell it?
All I smell is nature.
Yeah. Well, in this case, nature stinks. Yep. Looks like we can't go in there. Authorized personnel, yeah, do not enter. All right, why don't we start heading back, see how Bill's doing, and see if we can maybe at least see the guided tour one.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done that guided tour yet either. I'd like to hear what she's saying.
Did we see these?
No, I don't think we did. We just went around the front. White-tailed hawk.
Wow.
There's your flight demonstration. Your free flight demonstration.
Isn't it magical?
Yeah. That one is really curious. He has no idea what that thing is sticking up there.
No first graders running around. So my name's Addie. I'm one of the educators here at the Center for Birds to Prey. We're very happy to have y'all here. Like I said, it's gonna be a very intimate one-on-one tour. So at any moment, if y'all have any questions, feel free to ask them. We're all bird nerds here. I see we have our binocs, we have our cameras. So like I said, we are all bird nerds. Definitely feel free to ask those questions and we can really deep dive into whatever y'all are most interested in learning about these birds. So the game plan is we're going to have 30 minutes here in the courtyards, going over a few highlight species, and then at the end of that, we're going to hop over into our classroom area where we're then going to see some owls fly for us. So it's going to be
Wow.
really fun, hopefully pretty amazing. Our goal is to have y'all all owled out at the end of an hour. With that being said, do y'all want to go ahead and meet our first birds?
Yes.
All right.
Awesome. Feel free to follow me. You're also more than welcome to stand in the shade if you want. Just watch where you're stepping. We are constantly battling ants. But these are going to be the first ones that we're going to talk about here. So these are going to be known as Asian brown wood owls. They have one of my most favorite names of any of our birds in our collection. So based off of the name, where do you think Asian brown wood owls are from? Asia. What
Asia.
color do you think they are? Brown. And where do you think they live in Asia? The woods, right? So I don't even need to be here. Now, one thing you might be asking yourself is why is an Asian brown wood owl here in South Carolina? And you might have been told already with Stephen in the morning program that we have a very important species survival plan here at the center. And this is one of the species that is involved in that species survival plan. Currently, y'all are looking at the only pair of actively breeding Asian brown wood owls in North America. Now, does that sound like a good thing for a species survival plan?
At least it's
To just have one?
Well,
no. Not so much. I mean, it's great for us. Like, yay us, give us a pat on the back. But if we are wanting the whole species to be able to get protected because of these species survival plans, if we're going to be putting so much time and effort into protecting the species, we want it to be successful. And what's really interesting about species survival plans is they are not solitary. They are something that we have to work with other colleagues of ours in order to make sure that these species survival plans are genetically diverse. So what we're doing right now in the case of the Asian brown wood owl is we have been working with a colleague who recently imported some non-related Asian brown wood owls over from the European breeding program, which is doing quite well. And whenever this pair lays chicks and those chicks are old enough, we then send them up to our colleague. We're hoping that once they are fully mature, we're going to be able to pair them together, and by doing so, one day we'll no longer be able to say we have the only active breeding pair of Asian brown wood owls in North America. Right? Again, yay us, not so much for the species. But
Chicks have they had?
how many have they had? They've had a fair bit so far, over 6 that I know of. I will say the pair that's in here, we have a male and female. That's why we're able to get chicks. The male has been with us for 20 years, and before he was part of the species survival program, he was an ambassador. He would fly for programs, and now he has a secondary job of courting the female that's in there with him, and he does a very good job of it. And in fact, this is actually the second female that he has been with. Birds will mate for life or until one of their mates has passed away. Unfortunately, the other female that was in with this original male, she was a much older bird and unfortunately did pass away. But because of that, he had experience with wooing females, and he was quite successful in wooing this very much younger female, and thankfully has been quite successful with her as well. Right now, we're training when they're younger offspring to kind of be part of our flight program. So we kind of try to give, yes, that one that's down there. He has been part of our flight program before. We like to give our birds a little bit of what we call vacations, where they'll have some time off during certain parts of the year, and then they'll come back during other parts of the year and be part of that flight team. So that way they get a little bit more enrichment, they get some time for themselves, and then they also get some more working time. So he's coming off of his vacation, and hopefully in a few short months he's going to be doing what these other birds you're going to see here do with this fly for us. You might also notice that these two birds are giving us some very different body signals here. The female, who is the one who's closest to us, she is popping her beak, she's keeping her eyes on you all that she doesn't know, and she might every now and then have her nictitating membrane, which is her third eyelid, come over and rehydrate her eye. Those are all indications that she is slightly weary of us. She does not want us going any closer to her and her territory. Now, if she was extremely nervous, she would try to fly back away from us, or she might even become territorial and fly towards us. Right now, though, she is just standing her ground. And this can be expected, especially of a female bird that we have not had for a very long time. She's still not as used to humans as her mate is. Her mate, the male who's behind her, he tends to take naps during the tours. He tends to bathe himself, treat himself, eat a lot of times. Most of the time, he could not care that we are here in front of him. So hopefully in a few more years, once she becomes more confident in the fact that we're not going to climb over this fence and come anywhere closer to her, we might hopefully see those kind of territorial displays less in the pen. Now, do we have any questions so far about our Asian brown wood owls?
So
Yeah.
he has this like chopping kind of thing that's going on. Is it her sound? Is it?
Yeah, so the beak popping that she is doing, that is her letting us know that she doesn't want us any closer. That's supposed to intimidate other predators. Even
So the female's in front and
the female's in
back.
front. Yes,
Got it.
the female's in front, the male is
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
more sense.
So she's popping her beak. She's letting us know that she does not want us.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Any other questions? Yeah.
All 6, do they all live that you have?
Yes, so far their chicks have been quite successful, which is incredible. You don't always see that with a breeding program, either in the wild or in captivity. This past year, though, they did have some unfertile eggs, which is unfortunate, but it also highlights how important it is to go ahead and have these breeding programs established before it becomes critical for them to be implemented in a hatch and release program. Because sometimes eggs aren't fertile, and that's just how it goes. Now, if this was, let's say, a very critically endangered bird like the California condor, those eggs not being fertile could be, devastating for the overall species. For this bird, they are considered the least concerned right now. So this pair right here not having fertile eggs, it is not the end of the world. We're just going to keep our fingers crossed for next year. And this is also, again, highlighting why it's important to have an established breeding program, because sometimes you might have birds that are too young to reproduce. Sometimes you might have birds that are too old to reproduce. You also might have birds that just don't get along. And then also you want to make sure that they can make good parents too once they are fully grown.
Do you
survive in the wild?
Do
Here,
they-
if you release
Yeah,
them
so
to states?
if we release them here in South Carolina, would they survive? Maybe potentially. I think it'd be very hard for them to survive. You might notice that there is a heat lamp in their enclosure, and that's because this is going to be a subtropical species. So most likely, I don't think an Asian brown owl would be able to survive year-round here in South Carolina. Maybe down in Florida, where you see a lot of invasive species being able to survive because of the unique climate that Florida has. But if this was a bird that we would implement a hatch and release program for, what we would do is we would hatch the chicks here in South Carolina, raise them, but then ship them over to their native country. And then they're going to have a bigger breeding program established.
That's
there.
what I was wondering, because
Yeah.
I would assume if they imprint and all this stuff, like how much time do you have to
Yeah,
get them
it also
wild?
depends on kind of the individual bird. So let's say, for example, let's say a native bird, like the burrowing owl. That's a native bird that potentially could become a hatch and release program bird. If that was the case, we would make sure that we would minimize any human interactions with the chick, meaning we would try to eliminate it as much as possible. So, for example, we would be having the parents fully be the ones to raise them. We would make sure that the parents are the ones feeding them, and we'll make sure too that the parents are pretty much the only thing that those chicks see. That way, the chicks are going to know that they are birds and not humans. They're also not going to get habituated to humans by seeing us around. The way that we can feed these birds in enclosures is a very much a non-engaging way, using the food drawers that we have in there. We pull the food drawer out, we'll put the food in, put it back in. The bird never sees us. Now, normally the reason why we do that is to minimize stress on our individual birds. There are birds in our collection that don't always want to be very close to humans in their own territory, so we like to give them that space and decrease the stress as much as possible. Or in other cases, maybe a bird might be territorial because they're incubating from eggs. So we tend to have that food drawer in all of our enclosures just to make sure that no matter what the circumstance of that individual bird, that they're going to be as comfortable as possible.
So do they get live prey at all?
The ones here on our education side do not. It goes against our permits that we have. So the permits that we have that allow us to have these birds as educational ambassadors, there's a lot of very strict rules that come along with it. One of them is that you cannot encourage your birds to hunt. If you are encouraging your birds to hunt, that would fall more closely with a falconry permit. That is a permit given to hunters to go out and hunt with their birds of prey. We do not have a permit. Now, our medical site has yet another
Okay,
permit,
that's what I was wondering.
and they are allowed to use that permit to live test their birds on live cases.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all paperwork, pretty much.
Can I just ask, going back to the eggs again? So how do you know how do you know whether they're fertile or not? And then
How do you know if they're fertile or not? So after the female has laid the eggs and she has incubated them for around 10 days, we will go in there and do something called candling, where we will put a light up against the egg, and by doing so, we see embryonic development inside that egg. Now, if there is no embryonic development after 10 days and we know she is incubated, there's a very good chance that it's not fertile. Sometimes too, we'll conceive too in those early stages for some reason or another. It might not continue growth, and so sometimes we see some kind of clumps of what would have been veins around the outer parts of the egg yolk, and that means that it was fertile, but unfortunately it stopped growing. So by candling it, we can see if it's growing, if it's not growing, and we can kind of go from there what we want to do with those individual
So
birds.
if the eggs are infertile, do you just still leave them with the mother? Or?
Yeah, it all depends on the bird. So if it's early enough in the season and the female bird is young enough, what we can do is go ahead and take those eggs prematurely and see if she has a second clutch.
Yeah, that was my
Now,
next
this
question.
is something that does happen in the wild, especially again if it's a good year when there's plenty of food for the parents to feed their chicks. If something such as a nest predation happens, such as snake or raccoon, what we tend to see is early in the season that birds may lay a second clutch, or sometimes even a third, depending on the species. Here in captivity, our birds are very well fed, and they tend to feel very secure in this environment. So they can have second clutches. They could also have third clutches. They could have a lot of clutches, but just because they can have multiple eggs in a single year doesn't mean it's necessarily something that we want to do for our birds. Egg laying can be very energy taxing for the female. It can be a little bit dangerous for that reason. And even though we are very careful to make sure that we're providing supplements onto those birds' food to make sure that no excess nutrients is being taken from the female, we try not to overly encourage egg laying when it is not going to be beneficial. So, for example, this year when her eggs were infertile, we did see if we can get a second clutch from her. We did get a second clutch. Those eggs were also infertile. But after that second clutch, we let her keep those eggs, and she was incubating them until around 35 days or so, and that's when her hormone levels dropped, and she essentially realized that those eggs were no longer going to hatch. Once that happens, she gets up off them, and then we can go in there without any worry that she's going to lay a second egg, or a third clutch, I should say. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, with that, if y'all want to follow me, again, we're going to try to do some phase hopping. Now, this bird here is known as a milky eagle owl. I just wanted to point him out because his name is not on his enclosure yet. Milky eagle owls are the largest owl in Africa, and this is a newer bird to our collection. That's why we don't yet have an updated sign for him. Despite him being a newer bird in our collection, he is not by any means a new bird. He is over 50 years old.
Wow.
Yes, so birds in captivity can live double, sometimes even triple their natural life expectancy that they would in the wild. Some reasons for this is free food, free healthcare, gotta go through some closures. So I would like to think our birds are living the high life. Then we'll keep on going. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna bundle two birds into one because one of the birds is not on display right now. Hey, good bird. There you go. So, this bird that we're looking at is the second largest owl species in the world. She's an Eurasian eagle owl. She's also a female, and what that means is that she can be around 20% bigger than her male counterpart. She is quite large at around 5 pounds. Now, in the enclosure next to her is South Carolina's version of an eagle owl, and that's the great horned owl. Now, the reason that we have that enclosure covered up right now is that great horned owl is doing a very, very, very important job for us. She is fostering 2 orphan great horned owl chicks. Right now is the time of year that we tend to see a lot of chicks come into our medical facility, and most of the time we're able to raise those chicks in a way that they can still get into the wild. The reason that we have that individual great horned owl, though, is because when she was found by some very well-meaning people, they did not take her to a rehab, whether ours or someone else's. Instead, they thought they could help her by themselves, and they took her home and they started feeding her. Because of that, that great horned owl that's in that enclosure is known as a human immigrant. She does more closely relate to humans than she does other great horned owls, at least in the important parts of who is going to be providing food and who is a potential mate or who is a potential rival. And to really put that into perspective for you, that great horned owl that's in the enclosure, she can grip at 500 psi, that's pounds per square inch. A German Shepherd can bite around 250 psi, and a human can squeeze 1/5 at like 50 psi, right? So nothing really comparative to the great horned owl. Now, even though she herself cannot get released out into the wild, every single year, just like the pair of Asian Darwin owls that's down there, she lays eggs. unlike the pair of Asian brown owls, she is by herself, so those eggs are not fertile. Either way, though, she's going to incubate them, thinking that they will be, and all those eggs are going to ship. Fortunately for her, that's not the case. But fortunately for us, we can use our own biology to our advantage. So that is when we can take any orphan great horned owls that are in our medical clinic. And while our medical team does a very good job of raising those chicks using camouflage and puppets, it's still very energy taxing and it's a lot of time put into those chicks. And so what we'll do is we'll go in there and we will take out the eggs, put in the chicks, and then she thinks that she has hatched chicks that she will then raise herself. And she does a great job of feeding them, of preening them, and making sure that they know that they are a great horned owl. I always think it's incredible that she can stop the cycle of what happened to her from happening to other chicks. And once those chicks are fully fledged out, they're going to get put into a flight area where they're going to build up more of their flight muscles, and then they are able to get released out to the wild. Again, I always think it's really, really incredible for that individual.
Yeah, so they turn that owl into like the Humane Society or something like
Yes,
that?
eventually they did realize that they did not want a great horned owl in their living room, and I believe they took it to DNR, and then DNR took that to us, but unfortunately once that happened, the damage was already done, so cannot be released because of that. So the moral of her story, if you ever see a chick on the ground, before you pick it up, before you touch it, give us a call. We are more than happy to help you assess the situation and see what needs to happen with those individual chicks. Sometimes it might be something as simple as you see a chick that has a bald head. If you see a chick that has a bald head, fully fluffy everywhere else, what do you think that chick is?
Vulture.
A vulture. And where do vultures like nest? On the ground, right? So if you see a vulture chick on the ground, awesome, that's where it's supposed to be. If you, let's say, see a very young, obviously young chick that's not a vulture that has fallen out of the tree, but you see the nest and the nest is within reach, we might be able to talk you into how to take that chick from the ground and re-nest it up in the tree. That way the parent can still raise it. Or if it's a scenario where the chick does need physical help, maybe if it fell out of the tree that was extremely high, it can get re-nested and it might need to have a physical exam in case it broke anything on that descent down. Then we will have that chick taken to our medical hospital where we'll assess it, hopefully be able to rehabilitate it, and eventually get it back out into the wild. That's the goal of any of the birds that come into our medical department. Now, any other questions about the great horned owl before we deep dive into the eagle owl?
No, but I do have a question about buzzards
Yes.
and vultures.
Yes.
The term, is it?
Yes.
You know, I hear turkey buzzard more than I hear
Yes.
turkey vulture.
So what you hear is a little bit of Americans not necessarily knowing what they're talking about. So with that, and I know, I used to do it too. So a lot of times people here in the United States call vultures and buzzards an interchangeable name. If you were to go over to, let's say, Europe though, and you were talking about a hawk is technically a buzzard. So buzzards are going to be in a group of birds known as buteos. Buteos can be anything from common buzzards to red-tailed hawks to red-shouldered hawks. Essentially, the soaring hawks are going to be the buzzards. The belief, though, is that Europeans, never having seen a vulture where they are natively from, came over here to America and they saw a bird soaring around just like a hawk does where they're natively from. They're like, ah, that's a buzzard. When in reality, they were seeing a vulture. So it's kind of a American colloquialism that has stuck around for centuries. But technically, a buzzard is a hawk and a vulture is a vulture. And vultures here at the center are viewed very, very well. They are big fans of vultures. They are a fan favorite here. They're very charismatic when you get to know them. And so we always try to encourage people to call buzzards hawks and call vultures vultures. Because sometimes there's a little bit of a negative connotation about buzzards sometimes, especially with how people refer to other people as buzzards sometimes. So vultures need as much PR help as they can get, so I always encourage people to call vultures by what they are.
I've been pushing that buzzard narrative for years.
Oh my gosh!
I'm the boy.
Well, now you can help. Now you can help though. Now, whenever you're at a dinner table or out barbecuing with friends, and they're like, "Yeah, look at that buzzard," you can be like, "No, it's a vulture." So.
Got a lot of explaining.
I know, I'm a great
Trying to get it out of the sun.
Get all the bird facts during then.
So what makes it an eagle owl? I see that on several
Yes.
of these things.
So you see a lot of eagle owls. So eagle owls are going to be very similar to the fact that buzzards are going to be in the buteo category. Eagle owls are going to be in the bubo category. That's your eagle owl category. So technically, the great horned owl, that is going to be North America's version of an eagle owl. She just doesn't have it in her name. Now, eagle owls are going to have three main characteristics. They're going to be very large, big bird. They're going to have jewel toned eyes, so yellows, oranges, kind of a russet red color sometimes. And they're also going to have plumage horns. You might notice that some of these owls are going to have those little tufts of feathers on top of their head. Not actually ears, just feathers that help disrupt the shape in the environment. Some eagle owls, such as the great horned owl, are even known for those plumage horns. So those are going to be the three main characteristics that you can use to tell if you have an eagle owl in your backyard. And if you do, and you live here in South Carolina, that eagle owl is going to be the great horned owl as well. Now, the Eurasian eagle owl is a bird that's native to Europe and Asia, hence the name Eurasian and Eurasian eagle owl. This is a bird, though, that has very much faced, unfortunately, a wide and very drastic kind of diminishing of its natural habitat. Unfortunately for those birds, whenever us humans were out and about in our yards or in our pastures, way before we had electricity or cell phones, we had the ability to have a great horned owl call, nice. But we had the ability to be able to view the night life of the animals as easily as we do today. Whenever we would go out and see a bird as big as this bird, we would almost have a natural fear of this bird, which is fair, right? If you're out in the middle of the woods at nighttime and this bird just pops up overhead, I'm going to get scared, right? I think that's a very rational thing for a lot of humans to experience. And even though this bird cannot hurt any humans because she is only 5 pounds, she's not looking at humans as potential food sources, she's not looking at your pets as potential food sources. This is a bird that, unfortunately, in much of her habitat, has faced a lot of extermination. This bird is extirpated from a lot of its historical habitat because of kind of misinformation that has gone around for many years. There is also a lot of cultures that view owls as bad omens, or sometimes omens of death as well, and will try to persecute owls for those kind of religious beliefs.
Should I call
And it's
Joe?
one of the reasons that we feel like it is so important to bring these owls out, to educate you all about these owls during the daytime. That way, if you have to see one at nighttime, hopefully it won't be as scary, let's say. Now, the eagle owl, because of a lot of education, has been coming back in some of its habitat, which is great. And something else that's happening with this bird is a species development, which is very similar to the Asian brown owls that are down there. And again, like with the Asian brown owl, it's a bird that we have to work with other facilities in order to make sure that this breeding program is as genetically diverse as possible. So you can actually find Eurasian owls throughout much of the United States.
Hey, Joe, it's Mark. Nelson and I are just doing the, they're doing like a observation thing. Right now, they're supposed to do the flight demonstration at 2. But I got Bill with me, and he's not doing too good. I mean, he's having a hard time getting around, so we're not sure if we're going to stay or not. So if you wanted to start heading up now, okay. Okay, so why don't you head up now? If we're not in the parking lot, do you know Nelson's white car with the fit?
Not just
Alright, so
safe, but Flacco had never been.
okay, because Bill is sleeping in the car right now. He didn't want to do this with us, but if you get there before we do, just look for the white car with a big guy sitting or sleeping in it, and we'll be there as soon as we can.
When he passed away, they did something called unique counseling.
Nothing. You just come in and just go into the parking lot. If you wanted to actually look at the place, you would have to pay. It's a white Honda Fit, so it's a little car. All right. See you in a little while. Bye.
3 billion birds in the United States every single year pass away because of window collisions. It's unfortunate, but not unsurprising. Something else that was also found in Flacco's new property is the fact that he had apparently ingested a bird, most likely a pigeon, that had pigeon herpes. We're all kind of certain of the scientific name and everything. And thirdly, kind of what would have done him in if it wasn't for the window strike is that he had 3 different types of rodenticide that he ingested in his body. So what we can tell from this is, unfortunately, again, window strikes, it's a big, big killer for birds. But also, too, Blanco was trained on animals that he was able to catch easier. So the animals that were sick, the animals that weren't acting right because they had been poisoned. And rodenticide is a big thing that we see not only on a global level, but also a local level. And we'll be talking about rodenticide a little bit later with some of the other birds that we also fly. But one of the reasons I like to bring up Blanco is that Blanco was a bird that kind of became an international superstar for the year that he was out of enclosure. And people really cared about him. They really cared about the fact that this was a bird that was in their backyards, or he was, for at least that small part. And because of how he died, people wanted to change their environment. They wanted to make their environment better. So right now, up in New York, they are attempting to pass a law called Blanco's Law that states whenever a new building is being put in place, that bird-safe glass has to be put in that window. And by doing that, hopefully we can reduce how many birds are striking windows every single year. And now this is a glass that can be a little bit expensive if you're putting it into a new home, but it has UV reflective surfaces inside that glass, so that way the birds can see it. If you are like me and you cannot afford to just remodel your whole house with brand new windows as much as you would want to catch birds, something else you might also want to consider is maybe putting up UV reflective stickers in your windows, especially ones that might be by a bird bath or by a bird feeding station or even by a berry bush as well. That way, again, it reduces how many birds are striking those windows. And it's one of those things, too, that we can, as individuals, make us change in our life that hopefully can positively affect our own environment and the animals that live there as well. But does anyone have any questions about blue owl? No? Y'all ready to go and see our birds? Yeah? Let's go see some flying. Justine, are you receiving? Go ahead. You're ready to go whenever you are. Okay. So I know most of y'all were here for the morning program, but just to kind of remind everyone, these are going to be fully free flying birds. That means they have the option of going wherever they want, whenever they want. Normally that's going to be from perch to perch to the trainer's glove. And here in Owlwood, it's a very intimate setting. There's a very good chance that the owls are going to fly right over you. You might even feel a feather or two. So just remember to stay sitting down if the birds are actively flying. We don't want anyone to stand up and get a bird's forehead. Take it from me, it's not a very fun thing to experience. Also, something else that you're going to notice with these owls too is they tend to have a very low flying style. And that is something that is very much a key characteristic of how owls fly. Because owls are focused a lot of times on a stealthier flight, since they have very soft and kind of bristled feathers that allow them to fly quietly, what they're going to do is whenever they fly very close to the ground. And they're so lightweight, actually, that they get a counter wind that pushes back up against them. And that makes it easier for them to fly. Flying is very energy taxing for a lot of different birds. And because of that, they try to kind of be the most efficient that they can be whenever they are actively flying. And so, again, that's going to be a characteristic that you're going to be seeing with these birds that are going to be flying in just a moment. Now, I will say, I think we need to give our trainer just a few minutes more to get ready, but does anyone have any questions about owls as we stall? Yes.
So we have nocturnal and non-nocturnal owls.
Yes.
Full.
So,
Well, that's part of my question. Then my second question is it easier for them to hunt at night with their stealth or during the daytime for some?
So owls kind of, and feel free if y'all want to take a seat, you're more than welcome to. We're just getting ready to fly our birds here shortly. So with owls being nocturnal, what nocturnal means is that most of the time they're active during the day. Us humans, we tend to be the opposite of that, meaning that we are diurnal, so we're mostly active during the daytime. And now, that being said, even though we're diurnal and we're mostly active during the daytime, does it mean that we're always in bed as soon as it gets dark? Every single one of us? Not really, right? And so we might stay up late to watch a movie. Maybe some of us have to work a night shift, let's say at a hospital or something like that. And so in the same way that even though we are nocturnal, or sorry, even though we're diurnal, we can sometimes be active during the day. Sometimes these nocturnal owl species can also be active during the day, even though they're nocturnal. That being said, they are going to be better predators at nighttime. They're more adapted to hunt at nighttime, and they also don't have to worry as much about other predators at nighttime as well. So that's why you tend to see a lot of these owls being nocturnal, or another term for it is crepuscular, meaning dawn and dusk active. So you tend to have some specialization that comes in there.
And the burrowing owl, is that nocturnal or is that
Burrowing
daytime?
owls are diurnal, actually. They're one of the few species of owls that are diurnal. One of the other ones that's known for a more diurnal activity is going to be the snowy owl as well. Mostly because of how far north it lives. There's going to be periods of its life that's going to be out and about during, full sunlight. Any other questions? Again, we're doing a little bit of stalling, so.
They have a cool, in Marco Island, they have the burrowing owls.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
And they always have them all, marked off, but
Yes.
you can see them. I mean,
They are incredible species. They're highly intelligent. That's a bird that if you ever want to do a deep dive into, I highly suggest it, especially about the burrowing owls that live in the American Midwest, because they live cohabitating with prairie dogs. And prairie dogs is another animal that is just incredible. If you ever have the chance to go out there and see some prairie dog towns. Oh, perfect. Yes. I got to do a summer out in Montana, and that was really cool to see that. So our first bird is joining us. So just as a reminder, make sure to stay sitting down if you're sitting down, and if you're standing, make sure to stand stationary. So that way none of the birds will fly into you. So this is going to be an eagle owl. So if you remember the characteristics that we talked about with the eagle owls, they're going to be large, which this bird is large. They're going to have plumicorns, which are going to be the feather tufts on top of their head. This bird, hers are a little bit smaller than the great horned owls, but she does have them. And then the third characteristic is that their eyes are going to be dual toned in coloration. So she has orange eyes, whereas our native eagle owl is going to have yellow eyes. Now, if you think back to all the other birds that we have met so far during the tour, we have met the Eurasian eagle owl, the great horned owl, the Asian brownwood owl. Those are all birds that are named after where they come from, what they do, what they look like, right? So if I tell you that this bird is named the Savini's eagle owl, does that tell you anything about the bird? Not really, right? So what if I told you, though, that this bird has another name, and that other name is going to be the desert eagle owl? Does that tell you a little bit more about the bird? Yeah, like where do you think this bird lives? The desert, right? But there's deserts in every single continent. But what if I told you that yet another name for this bird is the Pharaoh's eagle owl? Does that help you? Yeah, Egypt, right? This bird is native to northern Africa, and also highlights a little bit of an issue, a little bit of a debate, if you will, that's happening in the birding world, and that is the fact that some birds are named after people. And when birds are named after people, it doesn't necessarily tell you, again, where that bird's from, what that bird does, or what that bird looks like. And so it can make it a little bit harder for birders who are getting into birding to be able to recognize this bird in the wild. Now, as a result of this ongoing debate, the American Ornithology Society back in 2023 put out a statement saying that they are going to rename around 80 different birds within their jurisdiction from human names to potentially more bird-appropriate names. Now, the Savini's eagle owl is not a bird that is within their jurisdiction, but most likely when the American Ornithology Society officially makes the name changes for some of the birds that we have in our collection, such as the Harris's hawk, the Swainson's hawk, we are going to do a big name sign reordering to get the most accurate names possible. And most likely when we do that, we're going to include this bird in that name reassessment as well. Where this bird is natively from, more and more individuals are referring to this bird as the desert eagle owl, so that most likely is going to be the name that we are going to go with eventually. Now, this eagle owl is going to have a lot of similarities to our own eagle owl, again, the great horned owl. one of the kind of similarities that I always think is interesting is the fact that there's a color on this bird's body that's not going to blend in. It's not going to blend in the desert that this bird is from, and that same color is seen in the great horned owl, and that color also doesn't blend in the forest that the great horned owl is from. And that color is going to be the white that you can find underneath their beak. It's kind of a white chin strap, if you will. Now, whenever this bird does their adult vocalization, that chin strap is going to flare out, just like a frog croaking. And the white color, because it doesn't blend very well in the background, a lot of times is going to be used as a way to communicate. So not only can other owls be able to hear them, but they can also see them as well. White tends to be a great way for birds who communicate non-vocally. You can also see it in birds such as Harrison hawks, who are a pack hunting bird, and they need to be able to communicate with other members of their pack. So they have a white rump patch and a white tail stripe as well to help them with that communication. Another key similarity between this eagle owl and our own eagle owl, and actually a lot of eagle owls, is the fact that one unfortunate thing that we see with this bird is the fact that they like eating rodents. And the issue with that is, what do humans like doing with rodents? Poisoning them, right? Now, we've talked a little bit about poison and rodenticide with the Eurasian eagle owl, but unfortunately, it is a very important thing that we really drive home, because this is something that we see affect birds, again, on a global level, and it's very easy to prevent. Now, if you remember the great horned owl that we were talking about, that she's currently raising some foster great horned owls, she was supposed to have 2 other ones that she was going to raise. We got a call a while ago about an adult great horned owl that had fallen out of her tree and unfortunately already passed away. We went out there to investigate, looked down at the bird, looked up in the tree, and looking back at us were 2 pairs of eagle owl chicks. Unfortunately, though, the same reason that killed their parent is also going to be the reason that they ended up dying as well, and that was rodenticide. It's a big issue because during certain parts of the year, the parents aren't just feeding themselves, they're also feeding their chicks, and they are going to go to the most easily accessible food item, which tends to be food items that are acting slow or that are acting weird. And you tend to see that with a lot of animals that have ingested rodenticide. Now, it's a very sad story, especially when we have to include, the 4 chicks passing away. But it's a very important story to tell you all, because what is the solution to not accidentally poisoning owls? Easy solution. Don't use poison, right? They're done. We fixed the problem. And that's why it's so important that we think it's important to highlight what we're seeing in our medical facility and relaying that to you all. Most people don't want to intentionally hurt owls in their backyard. In fact, a lot of people want to encourage owls in their backyard. So we want to be able to give you those tips and tricks in order to do so. And in fact, if you do have a rodent problem and you don't want to hurt the owls, maybe consider a snap trap. A lot of times people feel uncomfortable with snap traps because you really have to confront what you did. But in my opinion, the win-win solution for everyone, unless you are the rat, is going to be a owl, right? You put an owl box in your backyard, make your backyard a little bit more hospitable to owls. They'll come in and do the rodent controlling job for you, and they do it for free. So it's a win-win solution, in my opinion. And again, unless you're a rat. Now, does anyone have any questions about our eagle owls before we move on to our next bird? No, everyone's just amazed by owls. That's okay, don't worry. Our next bird is going to be equally as amazing. It tends to be a fan favorite for a lot of people. And this next bird does a very good job of highlighting the fact that owls can come in all different shapes and sizes. Some of them can be quite large, and others of them can be, quite small. We are about to meet an owl known as a white-faced owl. Now, does anyone want to take a guess about why this bird is called a white-faced owl? Right, it might be the fact that it has a white face, right? Easy peasy. Now, if you were, let's say, wanting to find this bird in its native habitat, you would have to go to sub-Saharan Africa. That is where this bird is natively from. And in its native habitat, it's going to be a very fierce predator of smaller animals, such as small mammals, small insects, small reptiles. The key word there being small, though. This bird weighs less than half a quarter of a pound, so actually it's going to be weighing less than most of y'all's smartphones. That's how lightweight this bird is. And they need to be able to hunt prey item that is less than half their own body size. So again, very, very small prey that this bird is going to be hunting. Now, that being said, even though this bird is Oh, he sees something. Do you see what he sees?
No, there was a kite flying earlier, but he was ready to camouflage up.
Yeah.
Oh. I don't want to take a risk. Looks like it's possibly the case.
I haven't heard that one before, but yeah, I can see that. Kind of the gray and the white, yeah. Now we'll have to see, kind of keep a lookout and see what might be out there. I need to see like a feeding maybe. The birds are going after something.
That one's just for,
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold him on my glove for
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, I'll keep on talking about this bird, and what we might have seen there in a few moments is just him that set him up. Because he is a small bird, I sometimes will lovingly refer to this bird as a cheeseburger with wings. Because what it is he's pretty much on the dinner menu for any other predator that is in his environment that's bigger than him. And that does include other owls as well. And so, because of that, this bird has to really, really rely on camouflage in order to avoid those predators. So, if he sees something that he might think is scary or making him nervous, what he might do is suck in all of his feathers, become really, really skinny. He's going to squint his eyes closed, put his flamicorns up, and then he's gently going to rock forward and backward. Now, does anyone want to take a guess about what he's trying to mimic when he does this? A branch and leaf, exactly right. And it is very effective. I will say, sometimes when our groundskeepers are doing maintenance around the enclosures and they have like the blowers out or the weed eaters out, they will do this behavior. And it is really hard to see them in their enclosure, and we know where they are. Let alone if you were lucky enough to be able to go out to sub-Saharan Africa and be walking around, you could potentially pass within a foot of this bird and never have known it's there. That is how well they can camouflage. Now, if this type of camouflage does not work, the next thing that they might do is they might try to, instead of camouflaging themselves, they might try to intimidate that predator by puffing up their feathers, putting their wings out, opening their orange eyes as big and as wide as they can, and then swaying side to side. And by doing so, again, they're going to try to intimidate that predator into thinking that this owl is much bigger than it actually is. And hopefully it works. Now, because of that size kind of variation that you can see with this bird, it does have the nickname of Transformer Owl. So if you go to YouTube and type in Transformer Owl, there's a very good chance that you're going to see a white-faced owl doing that very interesting and very drastic display. Now, something else that you can also notice with the feathers of the bird that I personally find very interesting is in the feathers that are located around that bird's beak. You're going to notice that those feathers are very prominent. They kind of stick out, almost like whiskers on a cat. Now, just like whiskers on a cat, those feathers are going to serve the same function of being able to feel around in that bird's area. So, for example, if that bird is going to eat a prey item, they want to keep their eyes protected. So they're going to close their eyes, and then they're going to feel around with those feathers, feeling for where their prey item is before biting onto it. And by doing so, they can keep, again, their eyes nice and protected as well. Now, this bird is also doing his food bag. It's that little kind of growling sound that you might hear. I know it sounds sometimes like a cat growling, but as far as I know, there's not a reason particularly that it sounds like a cat. That's just what it sounds like for the most part. Now, do we have any other questions about the white-faced owl?
Is this a fully grown white
Yeah, so he is fully grown. He's almost going to be 2 years here shortly, but he is full grown. He's not going to be any bigger than what you see there. Now, these birds are very fast growing. They are going to reach full weight and full heights in a matter of months. And then after that, they're going to grow in their flight feathers and be independent from their parents in almost around a half year, depending on the owl species. Yes.
How long does that owl live for?
Forever. Unfortunately, they don't live forever in captivity. We currently have a white-faced owl that she's 18 years old, which is ancient for a white-faced owl. She's on several medications because of her age, and also she has a heat lamp that is provided for her too to kind of help with her thermoregulation. Now, in the wild, typically the smaller you are, the less chance of survival that you have. And when you're smaller, you can have a lot more offspring to kind of offset the fact that most of those offspring are not going to be able to see it to maturity. So on average, a white-faced owl is going to average around 1 year in the wild. If they're lucky and they make it past that first year, you might see them be able to survive into 3, maybe even 5 years in the wild. But very, very rare. It's only because we have these birds in captivity where, again, they are kind of contained and protected from those outdoor predators. And also, if they get any certain ailments such as arthritis or cataracts, we can take them over to our veterinary doctor in order to help get them whatever they need to be able to live longer lives. And they tend to, again, be quite well lived in captivity. So, yeah, 18 years old is incredible for a white-faced owl.
Do you need any beak dentistry?
Yeah, so they need any trimming of their beak. In captivity, they do. In the wild, they are eating prey that can be very dense and very hard. Here in captivity, they get a main diet of veiled chicks, mice, rats, and overall, those tend to be very soft prey items. So their beak is very similar to our nails that are continuously growing. And just like our nails will need to be trimmed down every now and then or else we break one of them, we also need to trim the beak of our birds, or they could also break as well. Now, not only do we trim the beak, but we'll also trim the talons too. It's something that's called coping. It's something that is required in order to make sure that these birds are maintaining a healthy life in captivity. In the wild, though, they do it on their own because of the prey that they're consuming. Yeah. Any other questions? No? Oh, yeah. Sorry, you're scratching. I thought you were raising it again. Apologies. So here in South Carolina, we have 4 main owl species. We have, starting from our smallest to our largest, our eastern screech owl, which is going to be very similar in size to the white-faced owl that you all saw. We have the barn owl, B-A-R-N, which is going to be a whitish-colored owl that tends to, I think, sound like a human standing in the woods. So if you ever hear that at night, might be a barn owl, might be something that you need to call 911 for, who knows. The next largest owl is going to be my all-time favorite owl, which is going to be the barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D, one of our 2 hooting owls. The other hooting owl, which is the largest owl, is going to be the great horned owl that we talked about during the tour. Now, what's very interesting about all 4 of these owls is that all of them have very unique and very diverse calls. So based off what you're hearing in your forest or in your backyard at nighttime, you can a lot of times correctly identify the owls just based off what you're hearing. If it's hooting, it's either going to be a barred owl or a great horned owl. If it's something that sounds like a horse kind of trilling or whinnying maybe in the woods, might be an eastern screech owl. And like I said, for the barn owl, they can have very much a screaming call that is very unnerving for a lot of people, especially if you don't know what it is. But with that being said, I highly encourage you all to go out into your woods at nighttime, kind of take a moment to just sit and listen and really appreciate what is there. A lot of times, all these owls that I talked about are in your area. We just couldn't be kind of busy. Sometimes we're watching movies, or we're on our phones, or we're talking to friends, and sometimes we just forget to look up. So I highly encourage you all to do that. And one noise that you might also hear as well is maybe the food begging that you have heard throughout your entire walk out here. Now, hopefully, if you're hearing food begging, that does mean that it's going to be a wild owl that is currently raising chicks. And speaking of chicks, we do have a few that we are going to bring out to show you all. So these are going to be the products of our species survival plan here at the center. So we have 2 different
have this last
right now. We're both very proud of both of them. So the one that's going to be a darker gray color, that is going to be what's called a Ural owl. And the ones that are white that have a black mask, those are going to be spectacled owls. Now, both of these species are very, very important to us, especially this year. This was the first year that we were able to successfully hatch Ural owls in over 17 years, so we're very, very excited. And these spectacled owls are also very important as well. These are the first time that we were able to hatch a 3rd generation of spectacled owls. For many years, we had a pair of spectacled owls that live over in our east courtyard over here, and they have been very successful in hatching and raising offspring. and they had an older chick, older female chick that we used to educate the general public about. And what was really impressive is that last year we were able to acquire from one of our colleagues an unrelated male spectacled owl. Again, these breeding programs are all about collaboration and working with other partners. So we were able to acquire an unrelated male spectacled owl, and we were able to put that spectacled owl with our older female spectacled owl. And they got along very, very well, hence the fact that we are now able to have, again, a third generation of spectacled owls, which is the first year that we are ever able to do so. Now, Mural Owl just relieved himself there. Something that you tend to notice a lot of young chicks do, whether you're watching nest cams or you might be watching these guys, they a lot of times whenever they are close to using the restroom, they're going to back up. Now, ideally, they're going to back up to the exit of the nesting cavity. That way they can poop on the outside. Sometimes with certain birds, such as eagles and ospreys, they actually have a 6-foot range of their beak. So don't stand too closely under one of those nests, or else it might not be a good day for you. Now, that's mostly to make sure that the nest does stay clean, but with owls, they are cavity nesters, so even though they try to poop outside, a lot of it is going to end up inside. Now, these owls are going to be at the stage that we call fledging, where, as you can see, they're very aware of their environment. This one especially is doing a lot of movement in his environment. And this is something that we tend to see in a lot of owls these ages as well. This is also the age that a lot of them get chicked out, because during this time of year, it's very common for them to fall out of the tree. You're going. You're going. Okay.
He wants to say hi, Nelson.
Yep. Yeah. There we go. There we go. Let's see if you can talk to this. But as I was saying, these are birds that at this age, they are starting to hop from branch to branch in their tree, and then they might fall out of that tree. And that's when, again, they get chicked out, because people see an obviously young bird, and they might be looking around and not see their parents like we're here. Now, most of the time, the reason they might not see their parents is, one, because those parents are out hunting for those chicks, or two, those parents don't want to go anywhere near that ball of fish there that is by their chicks, right? And so they can always hatch another clutch of chicks. They can't always, come back from the dead themselves if they're going up against a big, scary predator. So, again, just because you don't see the parents, they're not going to. In fact, at this age, these chicks use something called the union-assisted climbing, where they would talon their way up the trunk of the tree, flapping their wings. That builds up flight muscle. And so not only is that going to get them back up in the tree, but also it's going to help build that flight muscle, so that way, hopefully, when they're hopping from branch to branch, that's going to be a little bit more successful the next time you go about doing so. Now, right now, something that's also interesting to see, too, that you tend to not see with our adult birds is the development of feathers. So all these fluffy feathers that you're seeing with this bird and this bird, that kind of fluffy feather is something more like a downy feather. And that's going to be the first feather that this bird is going to grow in. And that's because the downy feather is going to be used to keep those young chicks warm. The faster that happens, the faster both parents can go out and actively hunt. One doesn't have to stay behind in order to incubate the chicks and keep them warm. After that downy feather is grown in, the next feather that they're going to grow in, which is something that you tend to see a little bit better on these spectacled owls, I would say, the darker feathers in there, is the fact that they are going to be growing in their flight feathers. So he just heard me talk about his flight feathers, so there they are. Now, those flight feathers on his wing and on his tail, as they grow in, they're going to be known as his blood feathers. So there's a blood vessel that runs through that feather, supplying nutrients to grow that feather. After that feather is fully grown, that blood vessel is going to grow, and the inner shaft of the feather is going to become taller. Now, what that means is that while it's growing, the blood feather is going to be very fragile and very sensitive. If it breaks, it's essentially going to be an open wound that could get infected. So we always make sure that whenever we're handling these young chicks at this very fragile age, that we're doing so with awareness that we need to be extra careful around the feathers. After those feathers are grown in, if they get pinched, if they get caught up somewhere, they're going to be followed, so it's not going to hurt the bird. It's going to be very similar to us if we, let's say, go and get a haircut. It's not going to hurt us. So in the same way that once that feather is fully mature and has no longer that blood vessel running through it, then it's not going to hurt the bird as it again wears down over time, and eventually they are going to molt it out and replace it as well. Now, does anyone have any questions about owl chicks? Again, this is the Ural owl. If you want to see an adult Ural owl, you can go over there. We have this bird's, I guess we can call it her aunt, is over there. And then we have the bird's grandparents over there as well. So if you want to see kind of adult versions of the bird, you're easily able to do so. Yeah.
How long does it take for them to get the new feathers to be able to fly?
So how long does it take for them? So probably in just, I would say, probably by this time next week, these birds would no longer be able to come out as they are right now because they are going to be at the stage where they're making longer and longer distance flights. And we don't want to have to call the fire service to ask them if they can get one of our owls out of the tree. So at that stage, they're going to go to their new homes to get trained. If we were to keep one of them, that is when we would put them in an enclosure by themselves, let them grow in the rest of those feathers, and then start their flight training in that enclosure, eventually working their way back out to being free-flighted in the wild, just like their older siblings are.
Okay, so a question. Why do you start them in training?
Yeah,
like
so,
the first thing you do.
Yeah, the first thing that we do is actually what we're doing right now. It's them being comfortable around humans. We are not forcing them to be out here. We're just asking them to be. If they are displaying signs of stress or nervousness, we would definitely change their environment so it would be more relaxed. But having them out around humans like we are right now, that's the first step of their training. So that way, once they're adult, when they do this, it's not going to be that big of a deal for them. After that, the next thing that we're going to do is start really associating food being at a certain time, and then also a sound being associated with that food. You might have heard whenever Justin was flying the owls around, you might have heard her whistle every now and then. It's like just a quick little whistle. That is something known as a bridge. You might be familiar with that with clicker training if you've ever done that with a dog. And essentially, that's going to be the first step towards training is the whistle, feeding. Oh, maybe.
He did.
No. Oh, he did? Okay. Yeah. On Justine's glove?
No, around it.
Ah, nice. Well, and then after that, we're then going to start asking them to hop from very small distance to the slowly extending that more and more and more. I feel like you're going to go somewhere I don't want you to go. So like I said, this is the branching stage. So if you're in captivity, we can kind of keep them contained a lot more than what they would be in the wild. Now, in the wild, this is going to be the stage that they are most vulnerable when they are starting to come out of the nest, but they're not a full-fledged flighted bird yet, right?
Keeps a hyena.
They're not going to be as strong as their parents. They're not going to be as aware of their as their parents.
You really are the bird whisperer.
See a lot of mortality in young birds and again at this fledgling stage. You are just escaping. So this might be the last day for this chick to come out. Yes. Now, it's okay for him. He is going to go to an enclosure and still be able to fly and move around, but hopefully be a little bit more contained than what he is right now.
He likes you, Nelson.
Okay.
I don't want to go in.
There we go. And that's also
that
something normal too, is that this chick does feel a little bit more vulnerable out in the open, right? As most young animals are going to feel. And so he's going to go to what he thinks is a nice big tree to help him keep predators.
Yeah.
So that's probably what we're seeing there. But it gives some scary eyes. Yeah, any other questions? No? Well, with that, I'll keep these guys out for as long as I can manage to wrangle them. But I do also want to sincerely thank you all for coming out and visiting us. We are a nonprofit, so all the proceeds from y'all's Good for the Get Day not only go into our education birds and initiatives and breeding programs, but also into our medical rehab as well. This last year, we were able to take in over 1,200 different birds into our medical department. And that is all because of the public supporting us to do so. So from us to you all, thank you all for helping us help the birds. If you all have any more questions or want to take any more photos of the chicks, you are more than welcome to. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day here.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. You too.
That was fun. Yeah. I'm glad y'all stuck around for the whole day. It's a lot more quieter in the afternoon.
Yeah.